Okay, my name is John Trimble. I'm a professor here at Chouanni University of Technology, but I'm also president and one of the founders of the International Network on Appropriate Technology. And we're the main organizers of a series of international conferences on appropriate technology. We hosted the 9th ICAT here in Pretoria last year, and it was sponsored by our NRF of South Africa. So the projects that we're talking about today are those that are follow-ups to the conference that we held in November of last year. Well, this was an effort that started actually before the formal founding of INAT that goes back over 20 years, where several of us were very concerned that technology was being used not for the people, not for the people's interests, but was being used for the interests of a few. So we wanted to see how we could engage in both the technologies that we were using as engineers or professors, but also how we could promote amongst a broader community what we call appropriate technology. And that's technology that focuses on empowering people and communities, technology that deals with the basic needs that people have, and move away from the massive amount of money that's spent on military technology. Well, the challenges that we face both at the beginning and now are that there's a massive amount of money that's directed toward what we call it as inappropriate technologies. I mean, there's, even now if you follow what's recently going on with the COP conference that just took place in Glasgow, that one of the issues was the massive funding that's going to coal-based and oil-based technologies. And we see these as good examples of inappropriate technologies because it's becoming more apparent the damage that this is causing to planet Earth. Well, I think it takes a heightened consciousness of both communities, individuals, and this is where universities have to put more emphasis in terms of a proper education about the history of technology and how technology has been abused and can be used more positively. So education in universities and even the K through 12 can play more of a role in terms of how to turn around the current situation in terms of emphasizing a technology to empower people. Well, there were several high points in our last conference, and one of those was the work with regards to appropriate technology linked to agriculture and farming, both with the keynote speaker and with a two-day workshop that Brian Stevenson did that engaged a number of small farmers in West Africa, in East Africa, and Southern Africa. And that's a major effort that we're looking at following up on. We realize that agriculture is key in terms of empowering people, and particularly if we look at Africa, we know that Africa has the largest base of potential agricultural land to develop that's underdeveloped. And we realize that the massive number of people that are engaged in agriculture at different levels. So one of the initiatives is to really look at how to engage not just those from the university to those that are practitioners and to those that are actually engaged in farming at different levels, So we're engaging 2 follow-up projects to the conference that you'll hear more about that involve basically small-scale farmers, but the idea is to use the skill set that many of our engineers and technical people have, to use the knowledge base to both in terms of engaging with indigenous knowledge, but also to look at some of the later developments with regards to not only directly with agriculture, but with regards to other fields that will allow for more effective planning and monitoring of agricultural and agribusiness. So let me speak more to this Appropriate Technology Manifesto, because we see this as a key way of popularizing appropriate technology. And we want to take advantage of the fact that we have a network of researchers and practitioners in this area of appropriate technology. We've had 9 successful international conferences where we presented peer-reviewed papers. So we've groomed amongst ourselves, amongst our collective and those around us, a number of people who we consider experts in appropriate technology. And we've asked several of them to write chapters in this manifesto. And what we're doing with this is we're going to start the manifesto with just some history of how technology developed and the forces involved. We're going to have a chapter that directly addresses the issue of ethics in technology. And we're going to then look at the importance of innovation with regards to technology and appropriate technology. And for that chapter, we have Professor Mamamuchi, who is a distinguished professor in innovation, and this is the Sarsi Chair here at TUT, who's going to do that chapter. And then what we'll do is we'll have a chapter that looks at the various stakeholders that are engaged that we want to approach with this manifesto. And these stakeholders range from, those engaged in educational fields like our universities, to governments, to international agencies, to nonprofit and NGOs. So what we're going to do is highlight how each of these different stakeholders have a different relationship to technology. So this is a chapter dealing specifically with stakeholders. And then what we'll do is we'll have experts in the various fields address the technology. For instance, water and sanitation. It's a chapter devoted to water and sanitation. And there we have a renowned professor in chemical engineering who's been dealing with water and sanitation projects. He's based in the U.S., but he's been dealing with projects in India, in East Africa. So he is considered an expert in water and sanitation. And he's going to directly look at how we should have these different stakeholders address the question of water and sanitation. We have another chapter on energy, a chapter on industry. Here, our Sarsi Chair here in our department, Prof. Mpofu, is writing that chapter. So the idea is that we're dealing with these range of technologies, farming, services, so that we'll have different advocates who are experts in these fields address these chapters and address how the different stakeholders should be dealing with appropriate technology in these fields. And then we'll close it with a chapter dealing with education and drawing all this together. So this is a major project that's an offshoot of our 9th ICAT, and fortunately we've had the opportunity with NRF to fund this. And we see this as being a key way of leveraging the years of experience we've gained through our 9 conferences on appropriate technology and through the various projects we have both as INAT and as individual researchers and practitioners. So we're drawing on all of this with this manifesto, and this will be hopefully a very popular publication that will be able to engage the various communities globally on the area of appropriate technology. Well, our major sponsor for the NIFCAT was the National Research Foundation of South Africa. But we had several sponsors at Tshwane University of Technology, both those linked to our department, like the niche area that we have on engineering and operations management, but also Professor Popola's area in chemical engineering. Her research area was a major sponsor, as was Professor Osman, who is a Sarsi chair. And then our DeSella chair, TUT chair, was also a major sponsor in terms of the financial side. Now, we had several other sponsors that were organizational partners that sort of contributed in terms of labor power to that. But the major one was the NRF of South Africa, and we're fortunate enough that we could maintain that connection to do the follow-up work that we're talking about now. Well, we're hoping that the level of support that we got from our 9th ICAP, from the NRF of South Africa and other groups will grow, and that this level of support will be able to leverage to expand in terms of not only what we do with regards to a conference, but more importantly, what we're able to do in terms of projects on the ground in Africa and the broader global South. Because we see that what's key is to take the knowledge that we have, many of us as academics and researchers and individual practitioners, and sort of pull this together and to use this in relationship to communities that are in need. So what I envision is, on one hand, a publication like the Appropriate Technology Manifesto being more of a driving force, but also I hope that we, because we're fully incorporated as a nonprofit, that we can grow INAT such that it can be more of service to communities on a global basis in terms of being able to do real projects on the ground. And this is where I think that on one hand, the initiatives we're showing with appropriate technology and farming are key, because they're on the ground and they have the potential to expand. I think that's also where our Technicon idea, we're engaging young people, students, in terms of getting them to think in terms of how to design appropriate technology projects, and then looking at how we can follow up with these designs in terms of actualizing some of these young people's ideas become key. So I think these three things together really provide a good mix for how we can expand and have a bigger footprint and have a more meaningful contribution to the communities with regards to appropriate technology.